The restaurant buzzed with energy. Laughter, clinking glasses, and the low hum of background music filled the air. Golden fairy lights hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over the long dining table where my coworkers and I sat, celebrating. Tonight was supposed to be special. My night. For the past 5 years, I had poured my heart into this company, often working late, fixing problems no one else wanted to handle, and mentoring junior employees even though it wasn't in my job description. My boss, Richard, had dropped hints for months, telling me I was next in line for the senior manager position. And tonight, at this very party, my promotion would be announced. I had imagined this moment countless times. The applause, the pride, the validation. I adjusted the hem of my navy blue dress and glanced around the table. My team was in high spirits, celebrating the company's quarterly success. At the head of the table, Richard stood, clinking his wine glass with a fork, signaling for attention. The room quieted. My heart pounded in anticipation. "Tonight," he began, his deep voice carrying over the chatter, "I want to take a moment to recognize someone truly exceptional. Someone who has shown incredible dedication, drive, and talent in just a short time here at the company. It's rare to find someone who can make such an impact in only 3 months." My smile faltered. 3 months? Richard turned to my coworker, Lisa. Lisa, the fresh hire. "Lisa," he continued, "you have exceeded all our expectations. Your leadership, creativity, and problem-solving skills have impressed us all. Which is why I'm thrilled to officially announce your promotion to senior manager. Congratulations." The room erupted in applause. I sat frozen, my fingers clenched around the stem of my champagne glass. My throat tightened as I forced a smile onto my face. I clapped along with the others as Lisa stood, blushing, and graciously accepted her new title. This wasn't happening. I felt my world tilt slightly as Richard turned toward me, as if remembering I existed. He grinned. "And of course, Kathy, you've been such a valuable member of the team," he said. "We appreciate everything you do." That was it. A hollow acknowledgement. A pat on the back after 5 years of hard work. I swallowed the lump in my throat and smiled wider. "Of course, Lisa absolutely deserves it," I said, lifting my glass in a toast. Richard nodded approvingly. "She does a lot more than you already, Kathy. You should take notes." Laughter. Lisa giggled awkwardly and muttered, "Oh, I wouldn't say that." But the words were already out there, hanging in the air like a slap across my face. I laughed along with them. What else could I do? Cry? Beg? Ask him why he had strung me along for months only to humiliate me? Instead, I lifted my glass to my lips and took a slow sip. As the night went on, I smiled, I chatted, I celebrated. But inside, a storm was brewing. When the party finally ended and I stepped outside into the cool night air, I pulled out my phone. My fingers trembled slightly as I composed a short, simple email to HR. Subject, resignation letter. Submission. "Dear Richard, please find my official resignation letter attached. Effective immediately. Best, Kathy." I hesitated for only a second before hitting send. As soon as the email left my outbox, I took a deep breath. For the first time in years, I felt something unexpected. Relief. But I wasn't done yet. On Monday, Richard was about to find out exactly what happens when you underestimate the wrong person. The office felt different that Monday morning. I walked in through the front doors with a sense of quiet satisfaction, my resignation letter already sitting in Richard's inbox. He had no idea what was coming. At first glance, everything seemed normal. The receptionist greeted me with a bright smile. My coworkers gathered near the break room, chatting over their morning coffee. Lisa was already at her desk, basking in the afterglow of her big promotion. I wasn't angry at Lisa. She hadn't done anything wrong. The real problem sat inside the corner office. The man who had lied to my face for months, making me believe I was valued, only to discard me like I was nothing. I took my time settling in, calmly placing my bag beside my desk and booting up my computer. I wanted Richard to come to me, And right on cue, his office door swung open. "Kathy, my office. Now." The entire floor went silent. People exchanged nervous glances. No one had ever heard Richard sound like that before. Urgent, confused, desperate. I stood up slowly, smoothed my blouse, and walked into his office. The door clicked shut behind me. Richard was already seated at his desk, my resignation letter printed out in front of him. He looked up, eyes scanning my face as if trying to figure out whether this was a joke. "You're leaving?" His voice was incredulous. "Yes." I sat down across from him, folding my hands in my lap. "Effective immediately." "But why?" This is so sudden. We didn't discuss this." I let out a soft laugh. "We didn't discuss Lisa's promotion either, but here we are." His jaw tightened. "Kathy, that wasn't personal. She just outperformed you." "She's been here for 3 months," I said, tilting my head. "But sure, if that's what you believe." Richard leaned forward. "You know I appreciate you, right? You've been such an important part of this company for 5 years. I don't want to lose you." I stared at him for a long moment, taking in the sheer audacity of his words. "You don't want to lose me?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "But you had no problem overlooking me for a promotion I worked years for. You had no problem laughing when I was humiliated at my own celebration party. And you had no problem telling me to take notes from someone who just got here." His expression shifted, his usual smug confidence beginning to crack. "Look," he said, running a hand through his hair. "Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I should have handled it differently. But you resigning out of nowhere? This isn't the right move, Kathy. You're making an emotional decision." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I sent that email on Friday night, Richard. If this was just emotion, I would have stormed out that same evening. But I didn't. I planned this. And I'm leaving on my terms." His hand curled into a fist on the desk. He wasn't used to losing. "So, what's your plan?" he asked, his voice sharp now. "Go to one of our competitors? Because I have to remind you, Kathy, that we have non-compete agreements." I laughed again. Oh, he had no idea. "I don't need to go to a competitor," I said, standing up. "You see, Richard, while you were busy ignoring my contributions, someone else wasn't." He frowned. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath, relishing the moment. "Do you remember Andrew Carter, the CFO you let go last year?" Richard tensed. Of course he remembered. Andrew had been one of the company's most valuable executives, but he and Richard had clashed too many times. Richard had forced him out, thinking he was replaceable. "Andrew reached out to me a few months ago," I continued. "He's starting his own firm, and he wanted me to lead the operations department. A director-level position. I turned him down at first. I was loyal to this company." I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice. But Friday night changed everything. I called him right after I left the party, and he made the offer again. I accepted. Silence. Pure, unfiltered shock. Richard stared at me like he was trying to process the information. "You're leaving for Andrew's company?" he finally said, voice tight. "I start next Monday," I confirmed. He opened his mouth, closed it, then exhaled sharply. "Kathy, be reasonable. This company has been your home for 5 years. We can work something out. We can talk about—" "I don't want to talk," I interrupted smoothly. "This decision is final." He clenched his jaw. "You won't be able to come back." I smiled. "I won't need to." I turned, walking to the door. Just before I stepped out, I paused. "You know, Richard," I said over my shoulder, "it's funny how you only realize someone's worth when they walk away." Then I walked out, closing the door behind me, leaving him alone with the consequences of his actions. And it felt amazing. When I stepped out of Richard's office, I could feel all eyes on me. The open workspace had gone eerily silent, the usual Monday morning chatter replaced by a thick tension in the air. My coworkers weren't even pretending to work anymore. Heads peeked over cubicle walls, eyes darted away the second I met their gaze. They knew something had happened. And in a matter of minutes, they were going to know exactly what. I returned to my desk with a serene calmness, opening my email and forwarding my resignation letter to the entire leadership team. Subject: Official resignation notice. Effective immediately, I am stepping down from my position at the company. It has been an experience I will not forget. Best, Kathy Simple. Professional. But the underlying message was clear. I was done. A few seconds later, the first whisper spread through the floor. Then another. Then another. The wildfire had begun. I didn't have to wait long before someone approached me. Kathy, is it true? I turned to see Rachel, one of the few people I actually trusted in this place. She looked stunned. I nodded, giving her a small smile. Yeah, it's time for me to move on. She exhaled sharply, shaking her head. Wow. I mean, I get it, but I didn't think you'd actually leave. Neither did Richard, I muttered. She let out a half laugh, half scoff. Well, he's an idiot. Everyone here knows you deserve that promotion. A few more coworkers started creeping toward my desk, pretending to look busy while blatantly eavesdropping. Even Lisa had poked her head up from across the room, her eyes darting between me and Richard's office like she wasn't sure if she should feel guilty or relieved. I could sense her hesitation. She wanted to say something, but she didn't. And honestly, I didn't care anymore. 10 minutes later, just as I was packing up the last of my personal items, my inbox pinged with an urgent meeting request from Richard. Subject: Urgent, let's talk. Meeting request, 15 minutes. Location: my office. I stared at the email for a long moment before sighing. Desperate men do desperate things. I took my time walking back to his office. When I stepped inside, the door closed softly behind me. Richard looked different now. The arrogance? Gone. The smugness? Gone. Instead, he looked like someone who had just realized they made a very, very big mistake. Kathy, he started, leaning forward. Let's talk about this. You're making a rash decision. I let out a soft laugh. Richard, I gave this 5 years of my life. The only rash decision here was yours. His lips pressed into a tight line. Look, I admit that I mishandled things with the promotion, but we can fix this. I'll match whatever Andrew's offering you. I tilted my head. You don't even know what Andrew's offering me. Does it matter? He shot back. We'll figure something out. I can get you a better salary, more flexibility, maybe even... I held up a hand, cutting him off. You don't get it, do you? Silence. I leaned forward. It was never about the money. It was about respect. His jaw tensed. I don't want to stay in a company where my work is ignored until I threaten to leave. I don't want to be matched only when I have one foot out the door. If I wasn't valuable to you before, why should I believe I suddenly am now? Richard's nostrils flared slightly. He wasn't used to losing control of the conversation. Kathy, be reasonable. You're walking away from a stable position for what? Some startup that might not even succeed? I smiled. That startup is being run by someone who values my contributions. And I'd rather bet on myself than stay in a place that treats me like I'm disposable. I stood up. Goodbye, Richard. And with that, I walked out. Packing the last of my things felt surreal. As I carried my box to the elevator, a few coworkers clapped softly, small acknowledgments of my silent victory. They knew. Lisa, still sitting at her desk, finally gathered the courage to stand up and walk toward me. Kathy, I didn't know. I raised an eyebrow. Didn't know what? Her mouth opened, then closed again. She knew. Of course she knew. She might not have orchestrated it, but she had benefited from my loss. It's fine, Lisa, I said, not unkindly. Enjoy the promotion. She flinched, but I was already stepping into the elevator. As the doors slid shut, I let out a slow breath. this wasn't just the end. This was the beginning. The Monday after I walked out of Richard's office for the last time, I stood in front of a sleek glass building, taking in the sight of my new beginning. Carter and Associates. Andrew's company was smaller than my old one, but it pulsed with energy and ambition. It was filled with people who were building something, not just maintaining a machine that someone else had created. I stepped through the doors, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Excitement. No more being overlooked. No more being undervalued. No more Richard. As I rode the elevator up to the top floor, my reflection in the mirror-like doors looked different, more confident, more alive. This wasn't just a new job. This was freedom. The moment I stepped into my new office, a real office with floor-to-ceiling windows and a door that I could actually close, I knew I had made the right choice. The morning was filled with introductions, meetings, and onboarding, but everything about it felt different from my old workplace. For starters, people here actually listened. During my first leadership meeting, Andrew turned to me, smiling. "Kathy, I want you to take the lead on our new initiative. We're restructuring operations, and with your experience, you're the best person for it." Just like that. No begging. No proving my worth over and over. They already knew my value. I nodded, suppressing the urge to glance around and see if this was some kind of test. "I'd love to," I said simply. A few of my new colleagues smiled in approval. Andrew nodded, as if he had expected no other answer. This was how things should be. No games, no politics, just respect. The first sign that things were falling apart at Richard's company came 2 days after I left. My phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. "Rachel. Kathy. OMG. Richard is losing it. Ever since you left, everything's a mess." I smirked, but I kept reading. Rachel. "He had to call an emergency meeting because no one knows how to handle half the things you used to do. Turns out Lisa doesn't actually do more than you already. She doesn't even know what she's doing." I laughed out loud. Of course. Of course, Richard had overestimated Lisa's abilities and underestimated mine. A second message came in. Rachel. "Oh, and get this. 3 clients already reached out, asking for you by name. When they found out you left, they weren't happy." I felt a rush of satisfaction. Richard had spent years taking me for granted. And now? He was learning a lesson he should have learned a long time ago. Some people are not replaceable. That afternoon, while reviewing strategy documents in my new office, my assistant poked her head in. "Kathy, you have a call on line 1. It's a company called Dawson and Company. They said they used to work with you and want to discuss moving their account over." I blinked. Dawson and Company was one of the biggest clients at my old company. "Put them through," I said, keeping my voice steady even though my heart was pounding. A moment later, I heard the familiar voice of Mark Dawson, the CEO. "Kathy," he said, warmth in his tone. "I heard you moved to Carter and Associates. Let's talk." I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile spreading across my face. "Of course, Mark. What can I do for you?" Within a week, 3 of my former company's biggest clients had reached out to me, all expressing the same frustration. "Things aren't the same since you left. We don't feel like we're in good hands anymore. If you're leading operations at Carter and Associates, we're interested in moving." And so, one by one, they did. I wasn't stealing clients. I didn't need to. They were leaving on their own because they trusted me, not the company I used to work for. And Richard? He was scrambling. Rachel kept feeding me updates. "Rachel. Lisa is drowning. She's not ready for this role at all." I heard Richard yelling at the leadership team in a closed-door meeting this morning. "Rachel. The board is furious about the client losses. Investors are not happy. Word is they're putting pressure on Richard to fix this. Fast." I could only imagine the look on his face, the panic, the regret, and the best part? I wasn't even trying to hurt him. I was just thriving somewhere else. That Friday afternoon, just as I was finishing up for the day, My phone buzzed with an email from Richard. I raised an eyebrow and opened it. Subject: a proposal. Kathy, I'd like to have a conversation. I believe we can come to a mutually beneficial arrangement. If you're open to it, let's set up a meeting next week to discuss options. Looking forward to your response. Richard. I leaned back in my chair, laughing softly. He was desperate. And for the first time in 5 years, I had all the power. I stared at Richard's email for a few moments, letting the sheer irony of it settle in. The man who had dismissed me so easily. The man who had laughed at my expense. The man who had told me Lisa does a lot more than you already, was now the one reaching out. And I knew exactly why. His world was falling apart. I took my time crafting my reply. No urgency, no desperation, just calculated control. Subject: a proposal. Richard, I'm available for a brief meeting Monday at 10 a.m. Let me know if that works for you. Best, Kathy. I hit send and closed my laptop. I wasn't walking into that meeting to negotiate. I was walking in to watch him squirm. At precisely 10 a.m., I walked into the familiar glass office building I had left behind weeks ago. Everything felt different. The receptionist hesitated before greeting me, unsure if I was a guest or a ghost from the past. Employees stole glances as I passed by. They all knew. And then, as I stepped into Richard's office, I saw him. He looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, a nervous energy in the way he sat, his fingers tapping restlessly on the desk. He wasn't the same arrogant man who had belittled me weeks ago. "Thanks for coming in," he said, forcing a tight smile. I sat down, crossing my legs and placing my hands in my lap. "Of course. What's on your mind?" He exhaled and leaned forward. "I won't waste your time. We need you back, Kathy." I said nothing. Just let the words hang in the air, heavy with irony. He continued. "I underestimated your role here. I'll admit that. But we can make this right. If you return, I'm prepared to offer you a substantial raise, a senior executive title, and full decision-making authority over your department." He sat back, clearly expecting me to be impressed. I wasn't. I tilted my head. "So, let me get this straight. You had 5 years to recognize my value, 5 years to promote me, 5 years to respect my work." I let that sink in before continuing. But instead, you passed me over for someone with 3 months of experience and told me to take notes on how to be better. And now, after losing key clients and watching your company spiral, suddenly you're offering me everything I deserved all along. Richard's jaw tightened. "Kathy, come on." I held up a hand, stopping him. "Let me ask you something. If I never left, would I be sitting in this chair right now? Would you have given me this offer out of appreciation? Or are you only doing it now because you're losing control?" His silence said everything. He tried to mask it, but I saw it in his eyes. The truth. He never saw my worth. Until it cost him everything. I let out a small, amused laugh. That's what I thought. Richard's desperation broke through. "Kathy, be smart about this. You have history here. A future. Do you really want to throw away all the hard work you put into this company?" I smiled. "Richard, you still don't get it, do you?" I stood up, smoothing my blazer, and leaned slightly forward. "I never needed you. You needed me. And now you're finally realizing that." His face darkened, but I could see it. The flicker of panic behind his eyes. I turned, walking to the door, but paused just before stepping out. "You should take notes, Richard," I said softly, echoing his own words back at him. "Maybe next time you'll learn to value the people who actually make your company run." Then I walked out, and this time I never looked back. Back at Carter and Associates, things were thriving. Our client roster had nearly doubled. More and more companies were leaving Richard's sinking ship and turning to us. And then, on a quiet Friday afternoon, Rachel sent me one final update that made me laugh out loud. Rachel. Richard just got fired. The board forced him out. They couldn't recover from all the client losses. I leaned back in my chair, sipping my coffee. Perfect. Richard had thought I was replaceable. Turns out he was. And me? I was exactly where I was meant to be. I stood at the departure gate, my suitcase in one hand, my boarding pass in the other. The excitement of the long-awaited family trip buzzed in the air, but inside, I felt nothing but an eerie stillness. Something was off. I just didn't know what yet. My parents had planned this trip for months, insisting it was going to be a special getaway just for the adults. A way to reconnect as a family without the distractions of kids running around. As much as it pained me to leave my two little ones behind, I agreed. After all, they'd reassured me 100 times. Lily, you deserve a break. The kids will be fine with your friend. Just enjoy yourself for once. Mom had said, her voice firm but affectionate. So, I had arranged everything. Stocked the fridge, left detailed instructions, even video called my babies twice before heading to the airport. I was ready to embrace this rare opportunity to be Lily again, not just Mom. But then she walked in, my sister Claire, and right behind her, trailing in a chaotic line, were her 3 children, kids I had been explicitly told wouldn't be part of this trip. My stomach tightened as I took in the sight. Little backpacks swinging wildly, sticky fingers gripping snacks, tiny voices excitedly chattering. I turned to my parents, confused. Hadn't we agreed on adults only? Oh, Lily, don't look so surprised, Mom said, waving dismissively as if I was making a fuss over nothing. Dad chuckled beside her. It's different with Claire's kids. They're no trouble at all. No trouble? I stared at my sister's youngest, Max, who was already climbing onto an airport seat like it was a jungle gym, giggling as he tried to jump off. Claire must have noticed my expression because she let out a soft laugh. Relax, Lil. My kids are angels. You won't even notice they're here. That's when Mom said it. The words that sent an ice-cold shiver down my spine. We just love them more. At first, I thought I misheard. Surely she hadn't just said that. But then she smiled, her eyes twinkling like it was the most natural thing in the world, like it wasn't a knife to my chest. I let out a dry laugh, shaking my head. Excuse me? She sighed dramatically. Oh, don't be so sensitive, Lily. We just mean they're easier. They listen. They're more... She hesitated, then gestured vaguely. You know, lovable. Lovable. I felt my face flush, a slow burning rage bubbling up beneath my skin. My mind flashed back to my children, my sweet, bright, beautiful babies who were at home right now, probably wondering why Mommy had to leave without them. Claire's kids weren't more lovable. They weren't more deserving. They were just the favorite grandchildren. And my kids weren't even worth a plane ticket. You lied to me, I said, my voice steady but only just. Dad let out a tired sigh. Lily, don't be dramatic. You know how hard Claire has it. Single mom, 3 kids, she needed this more than you. Needed it more? I looked at Claire, waiting for her to say something, anything, to acknowledge how messed up this was. But she just shrugged, completely unbothered, as if she had every right to be here with her children, while mine were left behind. That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a miscommunication. This was a choice. A deliberate choice to prioritize Claire and her children over me and mine. A choice that they never even considered explaining or apologizing for. I clenched my jaw and took a slow breath. This was the moment I knew things would never be the same again. I had spent years making excuses for them, convincing myself that the favoritism was just in my head, that I was imagining things. But now it was undeniable. And I had a choice to make. be the quiet, obedient daughter they expected me to be, or finally stand up for myself. I glanced at my boarding pass, then at my family, then back at my boarding pass, and suddenly I knew exactly what I had to do. They had made their choice. Now, it was time for me to make mine. I stood there, gripping my suitcase so tightly my knuckles turned white. The hum of the airport around me faded into a dull buzz as my parents and Claire continued chatting, completely oblivious to the storm raging inside me. "Lily, don't be so dramatic." Mom sighed again, waving a dismissive hand. "You're acting like we left your kids on the street. They're at home, perfectly safe." My heartbeat pounded in my ears. "That's not the point," I said, my voice low and measured, but anyone who really knew me would have heard the sharp edge underneath. Dad shook his head, already exasperated, as if I was the one making things difficult. "Lily, we just thought it would be easier this way. You're always so stressed with the kids. We figured you'd enjoy yourself more without them." I let out a hollow laugh, the kind that escapes when you're 1 second away from losing control. "Oh, right. So you were doing me a favor? Is that it?" I glanced at Claire, who was flipping through her phone like she wasn't part of the conversation. "And Claire? You figured she wouldn't mind bringing hers?" Mom shifted uncomfortably, finally sensing that I wasn't just annoyed. I was furious. "You know how hard things are for her, sweetie," she said, lowering her voice like she was talking to a child. 3 kids, no father around. She needed this more than you did. There it was again. That phrase. She needed this more than you. I could almost feel something inside me snap. "You keep saying that. Do you even hear yourself?" My voice was rising now, and people were starting to glance over, sensing the tension. I didn't care. What about me? What about what I need? Or does that not matter because I'm not your struggling, helpless daughter? Mom's eyes widened and Dad's expression hardened. "Lily, lower your voice." "No." I stepped forward, my heart hammering. "You lied to me. You looked me in the eyes and told me this trip was adults only. You knew I'd never leave my kids behind if I had the choice. You knew, and you didn't care." Claire finally looked up from her phone, rolling her eyes. "God, Lily, just let it go. It's a vacation, not the end of the world." That was it. That was the final straw. I exhaled sharply, gripping the handle of my suitcase. I wasn't going on this trip. Not with them. Not anymore. "Enjoy your vacation," I said, voice steady, controlled, deadly. I turned on my heel and started walking toward the exit. Mom gasped. "Lily, don't be ridiculous. Where are you going? The flight is boarding soon." "Not for me," I called over my shoulder. "Lily." Dad's voice was sharper now, angrier. "Don't you dare act like a child over this." That made me stop. Slowly, I turned around, meeting his gaze head-on. "Act like a child?" I repeated, my voice eerily calm. That's rich, coming from the people who just told me, straight to my face, that they love my sister's kids more than mine. Mom paled, looking around nervously. "Lily, honey, we didn't mean it like that." "You meant it exactly like that." I cut her off. "You've always meant it like that. I've just been too stupid to see it." The silence that followed was deafening. Claire, ever unbothered, sighed dramatically. "Jesus, Lily, stop being so sensitive. My kids are here. What do you want Mom to do? Kick them out?" I laughed then. A real, bitter laugh. "No, Claire, I don't want her to kick them out. I just wish for once in my life she thought I was just as important as you are." Mom opened her mouth to protest, but I didn't give her the chance. I turned and walked out of the airport, leaving them behind without another word. I barely remembered the drive back, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight I was surprised it didn't snap in half. I felt numb, like I was floating outside my own body, watching the scene replay over and over in my mind. I had spent years bending over backward for my family, letting things slide, making excuses, convincing myself that I was overthinking it. But they had just proven what I had feared all along. I was never going to be enough for them. Not as a daughter, not as a sister, not even as a mother. I thought about my babies, sitting at home, waiting for me. Waiting for the grandparents who had never prioritized them the way they did Claire's kids. And suddenly, I knew it had to be done. This wasn't just about the trip. This was about everything. Every holiday where my kids got smaller gifts than Claire's. Every birthday party where my parents fawned over her children and barely acknowledged mine. Every time I was made to feel like I was less. No more. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my mind was made up. I wasn't just walking away from the trip. I was walking away from them. For good. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the house where my children were waiting for me. The warmth of home should have made me feel better, but all I could hear were my mother's words. We just love them more. That one sentence had shattered something inside me. Something fragile I'd been trying to hold together for years. My parents had never said it out loud before, but they didn't have to. The favoritism had always been there, lingering just beneath the surface like a wound that never quite healed. I had spent my whole life proving myself, trying to earn the same love and approval that Claire got effortlessly. And for what? For them to tell me, to my face, that my children didn't matter as much? I felt my chest tighten. No more. I was done. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. As soon as I opened the front door, two small figures came racing toward me. Mommy! My daughter, Emily, threw herself into my arms, her curls bouncing as she hugged me tightly. Behind her, my son, Noah, clung to my leg, his little hands squeezing my jeans. You're back already? My best friend, Sarah, peeked around the corner, confusion on her face. She had been watching my kids while I was supposed to be on my adults-only trip. What happened? She asked, concern lacing her voice. I set Emily down and forced a smile. I'll explain later. Sarah studied my face, then nodded. She knew me well enough to see that something had shifted. Something deep. I turned back to my kids, running my fingers through Emily's curls. Did you two have fun? We missed you. Noah pouted, wrapping his arms around my waist. My heart clenched. They deserved better. They deserved grandparents who wanted them there, not ones who saw them as an inconvenience. I kissed the top of Noah's head, holding him close. I missed you too, baby. So much. That night, after I put the kids to bed, I sat at the kitchen table, my phone in front of me. My mother had called 4 times, my father twice. Claire? Not at all, no surprise there. I ignored the missed calls. Instead, I opened our family group chat. The same chat where my parents constantly gushed over Claire's kids. The same chat where I had spent years biting my tongue, smiling through the subtle jabs, pretending I didn't notice the imbalance. Not anymore. I started typing. I won't be coming on the trip. And I won't be part of this family anymore either. I hesitated for a second, then kept going. I've spent my entire life being treated like I was less. Like my children were less. Today, you made it clear that was never going to change. So I'm done. I hope you enjoy your vacation, but from now on, don't call me, don't text me, and don't expect anything from me ever again. I read it over, my pulse pounding in my ears. Then, without a second thought, I hit send. For a moment, I just stared at the screen. Then, one by one, I left every family group chat, blocking my parents' numbers before they had a chance to respond. It was done. I had cut the cord. The next morning, Sarah walked into my kitchen to find me making pancakes, the smell of butter and syrup filling the air. Okay, she said, crossing her arms. Spill. I flipped a pancake onto a plate. I'm done with them. Sarah blinked. Wait, with your parents? I nodded. Whoa, what happened? I told her everything. The lie, the betrayal, the favoritism that had finally been spoken out loud. By the time I finished, Sarah was gripping her coffee mug so tightly I thought it might shatter. Lily, she breathed. That's Awful. I shrugged, trying to play it off. It's not surprising. That doesn't make it okay, she snapped. I met her eyes, my throat tightening. Number, it doesn't. Sarah set her mug down. So what now? I exhaled. Now? Now I focus on my kids, on our life. I've spent too long chasing their approval. I don't need it anymore. Sarah studied me for a moment, then smiled. Good. Because you and your kids? You deserve better. I nodded, my heart lighter than it had been in years. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for my parents to see me, because I finally saw myself. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. At first, there was silence. A whole day passed without a single call or message from my parents or Claire. I knew they had seen my message. I imagined them sitting in their hotel suite, sipping cocktails, probably rolling their eyes at my dramatic behavior. But I also knew something they didn't. I wasn't bluffing. The second day, my phone started ringing. Mom. I watched it vibrate on the kitchen counter, my stomach tightening, but I didn't answer. An hour later, she tried again. Then, twice more that evening. Dad called next. Then Claire, whose name I hadn't seen pop up on my screen in months. I ignored them all. By the third day, the messages started. Mom. Lily, sweetie, let's be reasonable. You're overreacting. We need to talk. Dad. Enough of this nonsense. Call your mother back. Claire. Seriously, Lily? You're actually mad about this? Grow up. I stared at the messages, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Not a single apology. Not one admission that they had done anything wrong. They still thought I was just throwing a tantrum, like I was some child they could scold into submission. By the fourth day, the tone changed. Mom. Lily, this is ridiculous. We're family. You can't just cut us off. Dad, you're being selfish. Do you know how much we've done for you over the years? And then the one that made me sit up straight. Mom, Lily, your father and I need help financially. We need to talk. I blinked at the screen, reading the message twice to make sure I hadn't imagined it. There it was, the real reason for the sudden concern. I had expected it to come eventually, but not this soon. They weren't worried about losing me. They were worried about losing my support. The realization I had never seen it clearly before, but now it was blindingly obvious. For years, I had been bending over backward to keep my family happy. I had helped them financially more times than I could count, whether it was covering bills, lending money, or helping out when they overspent on something unnecessary. I never thought twice about it because, well, that's what family does, right? But looking back, I realized something. They had never once helped me. Not when I struggled as a new mother. Not when I was going through my divorce. Not when I was barely making ends meet. I had been on my own while they showered Claire with endless help, endless support, endless excuses. And now, when they realized I was serious about walking away, their first instinct wasn't to make things right. It was to guilt-trip me into coming back. Not because they missed me, because they needed something from me. That night, as I tucked my kids into bed, I felt something inside me settle. I was done feeling guilty. I picked up my phone, opening the text thread with my mother. I took a deep breath, then typed. You're right, Mom. I can't just cut you off. I should have done it years ago. I hit send before I could overthink it. A few seconds later, my phone started ringing. Mom. I let it ring. I wasn't playing their game anymore. The next morning, I woke up to a flurry of messages. At first, more of the same. Lily, please. Let's talk. This isn't how families treat each other. We raised you better than this. But when I didn't respond, the insults started. You're ungrateful. You're selfish. You'll regret this when we're gone. Then the final blow. Dad. Fine. If you want to act like you don't have a family, don't come crawling back when you realize you made a mistake. I stared at that message for a long time. A mistake? Number. The mistake was thinking they ever cared about me the way I cared about them. I locked my phone, exhaled slowly, and turned my focus to the only people who mattered. My children. They were my family now, and that was more than enough. A week passed. Then 2. The calls stopped. The messages slowed. Eventually, the silence settled in, and with it came a strange sense of peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for their approval. I wasn't chasing their love. I wasn't bending myself into knots trying to be seen. I was just living. And yet, as much as I felt lighter, there was still a part of me that ached. Not for my parents, not for Claire, but for something else. Or rather, someone else. My kid's father. It had been 2 years since our divorce. 2 years since I had officially let go of a marriage that had been over long before I had the courage to end it. And looking back, I couldn't help but see the parallels between him and my parents. I had spent my entire life begging for love that should have been given freely. The man who wasn't there. Jason and I had met young. Too young. What started as a whirlwind romance turned into a marriage built on hopes, dreams, and nothing solid underneath. At first, I thought we were happy. I thought he was my partner, my equal, my rock. But over time, little cracks started to form. When I was pregnant with Emily, he started working late. When Noah was born, he barely looked up from his phone. When I needed him the most, he was never there. For years, I convinced myself it was normal. That marriage was hard, that it was just a phase. But deep down, I knew the truth. Jason didn't want to be a husband. He didn't want to be a father. And one day, he made that clear. "I just don't think I can do this anymore," he had said, standing in our kitchen, his voice cold and distant. I had been holding Noah in my arms, Emily clinging to my leg, their tiny faces oblivious to the moment their father decided to walk away. "Do what?" I had whispered, already knowing the answer. "Any of it." And just like that, he was gone. No big fight. No dramatic affair. Just a man who never wanted the life he signed up for. Alone, but not really. At first, I had been terrified. How was I supposed to raise 2 kids on my own? How was I supposed to balance work, bills, exhaustion, and the crushing weight of being abandoned? But then I realized something. I had already been alone. Jason may have lived under the same roof, but he had never been there. He had never been a partner, never been the father our kids deserved. The only difference now was that I wasn't waiting for him anymore. And that was liberating. As I sat at the dinner table with my kids that evening, watching them giggle over a game they had made up, I thought about how much lighter life had become since cutting off my parents. I had spent years trying to get Jason to love me the way I needed. I had spent years trying to get my parents to see me, to treat me as equal. And in both cases, I had failed. Not because I wasn't good enough, but because they were never capable of giving me what I needed. It had taken me 2 years to stop looking back at my marriage. I wasn't going to take that long to move on from my parents. This time, I was choosing myself. That night, after I tucked Emily and Noah into bed, I saw my phone light up. Jason. I frowned. He rarely called. We only communicated through emails or short texts about the kids. Curious, I picked up. "Lily." His voice was hesitant, unsure. "Guilty." "Jason?" "I heard about everything. Your parents. The trip? Claire?" I stiffened. "How?" "Your mom called me." I froze. "What?" He sighed. "She was trying to guilt me into talking to you. She said you've been acting out and making things hard for the family." I let out a sharp laugh, shaking my head. Of course. Even after I cut them off, they were still trying to control the narrative. "And?" I asked, bracing myself for whatever he was about to say. "And?" Jason hesitated. "I told her to leave me out of it, that it's none of my business, and that..." He cleared his throat. "That you're a good mom, and that they should be grateful you're even willing to talk to them at all." I blinked. I hadn't expected that. Jason had never defended me before. Not when we were married, not even when I cried, begging him to show up for our family. Wow, I said finally. That's unexpected. Yeah, he sighed. Look, Lily, I know I messed up. I know I was a shitty husband, but I do know one thing. You don't deserve the way they treat you. You never did. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Jason and I would never be friends. We would never be anything beyond co-parents. But hearing him say that, hearing him admit that he saw what I went through, it felt like closing a door I didn't even realize was still open. Thanks, Jason. Yeah. He let out a soft chuckle. Don't get used to it. The call ended and I set my phone down, exhaling. I had spent so much time thinking about who wasn't there for me. But now I was ready to focus on the people who were. A month passed. Then 2. The silence from my parents became permanent. No more calls, no more messages, no more desperate attempts to guilt me back into their lives. At first, it felt strange. I had spent my entire life orbiting around them, seeking approval, begging for scraps of love and attention. Now, that pull was gone. But what surprised me most? I didn't miss them. One evening, as I was making dinner, Emily came into the kitchen, dragging her stuffed bunny behind her. Mommy? She asked, tilting her head. When are we going to Grandma and Grandpa's house again? I froze, my hands tightening around the wooden spoon I was stirring with. Noah, sitting at the kitchen table, perked up. Yeah, we haven't seen them in forever. I swallowed. How could I explain to my children, who were still too young to understand manipulation and favoritism, that their grandparents had never truly valued them? That they had only cared about my kids when it was convenient? I knelt down to their level, brushing a strand of hair from Emily's face. Sweetheart, I said gently, we're not going to see Grandma and Grandpa anymore. Her little face scrunched up. Why not? I hesitated. How much should I say? Because sometimes family doesn't treat us the way we deserve, I finally said. And when that happens, we have to make our own family. One that loves us the right way. Emily seemed to think about that for a moment, then nodded. Okay, she said simply, then grabbed her stuffed bunny and skipped away. Just like that. It was that easy for her. I wished it had been that easy for me. A few days later, just as I was settling in for the evening, there was a knock at my door. I frowned. No one ever just showed up at my house. I peeked through the window and felt my stomach drop. Claire. For a moment, I considered ignoring her. But a part of me, the part that was still learning how to let go, needed to know why she was here. I opened the door but didn't step aside. What do you want, Claire? She sighed dramatically. Wow, no hello. I crossed my arms. I wasn't playing her games anymore. Fine, she muttered, shifting her weight. I came to talk. About Mom and Dad. I stiffened. There's nothing to talk about. Lily, come on. She gave me a tired look. You've made your point, okay? You're mad, but it's been months. They're still your parents. I laughed. Actually laughed. No, Claire, they were my parents. Until they made it very clear that I didn't matter as much as you did. Claire rolled her eyes. Oh, please, they love you. Enough, Claire. My voice was calm, but firm. I'm not doing this. I see them for who they are now. I see you for who you are. And I don't need any of it in my life. Her lips parted slightly, like she hadn't expected me to stand my ground. But, no, I cut her off. I'm done being second best. I'm done being the less important daughter. And I'm done pretending that I'm okay with it. Claire stared at me for a long moment, something flickering in her eyes. Something almost like regret. But I didn't care anymore. Goodbye, Claire. And this time, I was the one who shut the door. That night, I sat on the couch with Sarah, drinking tea while the kids played in the other room. So your sister showed up? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Yep. Let me guess. She wanted you to forgive and forget so everything could go back to how it was? I smirked. Nailed it. Sarah took a sip of her tea. And I told her to leave. She grinned. Damn right you did. I leaned back against the couch, exhaling deeply. For the first time in my life, I felt free. No more chasing, no more begging, no more waiting for a love that was never going to come. I had my kids. I had my friends. I had peace. And that was more than enough. The text arrived while I was folding the laundry. Hey, sweetie, just a heads up. Christmas is going to be simple this year. Money's tight, so we won't be doing big gifts. Just the essentials. I stared at the message, my fingers tightening around the fabric in my hands. I wasn't surprised. My parents had always been practical about Christmas. They never splurged, never went overboard. But this year, something about the message felt off. It wasn't just that they were cutting back. It was the finality of it, like a decision had already been made, without me. Still, I forced a smile and replied, Of course, no worries. The kids will understand. Because what else could I say? My husband and I weren't exactly swimming in money either, but we always made Christmas special for our twins, Mia and Lucas. We saved throughout the year, picked out thoughtful gifts, wrapped them with care. Even if it wasn't extravagant, it was magical. But I swallowed my disappointment and let it go. After all, family isn't about gifts. It's about being together. That's what I told myself. That's what I believed. Until the photos popped up on my screen. It was 2 days after Christmas, a lazy afternoon. The kids were playing with their new toys, my husband was fixing a leaky faucet, and I was scrolling through social media, just passing the time. And then I saw it. Best Christmas ever. My sister's caption was plastered over a carousel of photos. The first image was my parents' living room, but transformed. A massive tree twinkling with white lights, its branches weighed down by shiny gold and red ornaments. A mountain of gifts spilled onto the floor, wrapped in elegant silver and gold paper. My nieces, my sister's 2 girls, sat in the center of it all, tearing into expensive brand-name presents. Designer sneakers, high-end electronics, and what looked like a brand-new tablet in my youngest niece's hands. I froze, my heart pounding. We hadn't been invited. No one had mentioned a family Christmas gathering. For us, Christmas had been quiet. Just my husband, the twins, and me, eating a simple dinner at home, exchanging modest gifts, and watching Christmas movies on the couch. No grandparents, no cousins, no big celebration. Because apparently we weren't part of the family this year. I scrolled through the photos again, hoping I had misunderstood. Maybe this was from last year? Maybe they'd reused an old post? But no, the timestamp was clear. This had happened this Christmas. I checked my messages. Nothing from my mom. Nothing from my dad. No invite, no mention. I swallowed hard. Had they even thought about Mia and Lucas while they watched my nieces unwrap hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars in gifts? Had they even cared? I felt sick. I didn't want to assume the worst. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe. But deep down, I already knew the truth. They had lied to me. Not just about the money, not just about the gifts. They had lied about what we meant to them. I wasn't angry at my nieces, they were just kids. I wasn't even angry at my sister. I had long accepted that she had always been my parents' favorite. But my parents, the people who raised me, the ones who told me that Christmas wasn't about gifts, that family mattered most, had deliberately excluded us from something that should have been for all of us. And the worst part? They had let my children believe that Christmas had to be small and simple because there was no other choice. Yet, for my sister's kids, Christmas had been grand and extravagant. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then, without hesitation, I went to my contacts. I blocked their numbers. Not in anger, Not in pettiness, but because sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. And this year, my Christmas gift to myself was peace. Blocking their numbers should have felt like closure. Instead, it felt like an open wound. The days after Christmas passed in a blur. I went through the motions, cooking, cleaning, playing with Mia and Lucas. But I felt hollow. The betrayal sat in my chest, heavy like a stone I couldn't swallow. My husband, David, noticed. "You okay?" he asked one evening as we put the kids to bed. His voice was careful, knowing. I hesitated. "Yeah, just tired," I lied, pressing a kiss to Mia's forehead before shutting off the light. He didn't push, but I saw the way he watched me, the way his brow furrowed when he caught me staring off into space. Because how do you say out loud, my own parents don't care about me? How do you admit that you weren't just left out? You were discarded? I expected them to try to contact me, but nothing happened. The silence stretched for days. At first, I thought my mom would at least try. Some excuse, some last-minute explanation to soften the blow. But there was nothing. Then my sister's name popped up on my screen. I let the phone ring. Then it rang again. And again. Until finally a text came through. "I saw that you blocked Mom and Dad." What is wrong with you? Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "we should talk." Not even an ounce of guilt or understanding. Just accusation. I stared at the message, my pulse hammering in my ears. What was wrong with me? David found me sitting on the edge of our bed, gripping my phone like it might break in my hands. "They didn't even try to deny it," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He sat beside me. "They knew what they were doing, Daisy, and they don't care that it hurt you." I exhaled shakily. I keep trying to tell myself that maybe I misunderstood. Maybe they had a reason. David shook his head. Stop. Stop making excuses for them. They made a choice." I swallowed, feeling the familiar sting of tears behind my eyes. He was right. They had chosen my sister, chosen her kids, chosen to lie to me, to let my children believe that Christmas had to be small and simple, while somewhere else they were celebrating with a tree full of gifts and laughter. That wasn't an accident. That was deliberate. That was a decision. The next day, I finally responded to my sister's message. They told me they couldn't afford Christmas gifts for the kids this year, but they could afford a full celebration for yours. They could afford luxury gifts, expensive decorations, a party, but they couldn't afford to even invite us? Explain that to me. Her response came almost instantly. "It's not a big deal, Daisy. Mom and Dad just wanted to do something nice for the girls. You're overreacting." Overreacting. I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't just about Christmas. This was how they saw me. Less than. The afterthought. The child who didn't matter as much. And for the first time in my life, I stopped pretending otherwise. I stared at my sister's message for a long time before typing my final response. "I hope your daughters had a great Christmas. Mine had to settle for small and simple because that's what Mom and Dad told me we could afford. And now I know where I stand in this family. So do me a favor. Don't contact me again." I hit send. Then I deleted the thread. And finally, I blocked her too. Not because I was angry, not because I wanted revenge, but because I was done. Done begging for scraps of love. Done pretending that I mattered. Done waiting for my parents to treat me like family when they had made it clear. I wasn't. I put my phone down, exhaled deeply, and for the first time since Christmas, I felt lighter. The weight of their rejection was still there, but now I wasn't holding on to it. For the first time in my life, my phone was silent. No messages from my parents. No passive-aggressive texts from my sister. No guilt-tripping calls trying to smooth things over without actually addressing what they had done. Just silence. And it should have been a relief. But in the days that followed, I found myself reaching for my phone out of habit. A part of was hoping my mom to come over to say, "Sweetheart, this is just a misunderstanding." I wanted my dad to step in and say, "We never meant to hurt you." But that didn't happen, because the truth was they had meant to do exactly what they did, and they didn't regret it. I should have expected the gossip. It started small. A mutual friend casually mentioned that my sister had been venting about me. Then another reached out saying, "Hey, is everything okay with your family? Your mom seems upset." Upset? She was upset? She had cut me out of Christmas and given my sister's kids everything while letting mine believe there was nothing to give. And now she was upset? I ignored the messages. But then David came home from work one evening, his face tight. "Your dad called me." I stiffened. "What?" "He said he's worried about you, that you're acting irrationally by cutting off the family." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "So I'm the irrational one? Not the people who lied to me and excluded my children from Christmas?" David shook his head. "I told him you were done being treated like you don't matter." "And you know what he said?" I crossed my arms, bracing myself. "You don't cut off family, no matter what." I felt a slow, burning anger rise in my chest. "No matter what," I repeated. "Even if family lies? Even if they show favoritism? Even if they hurt you?" David nodded grimly. "It's the same thing they've always done, expecting you to take whatever scraps they give while they prioritize your sister." I clenched my jaw, my hands curling into fists. This wasn't just about Christmas. This was about a lifetime of being second place. I sat in the quiet of our bedroom that night, staring at old photo albums. I hadn't opened them in years. Page after page, I saw the same pattern. My sister at the center of every family event, smiling, surrounded by love and attention. Me, always just slightly to the side. Present, but never the priority. I remembered birthdays where she got the bigger party. The brand new bike when I got my sister's old one. The way our parents beamed with pride at her dance recitals, but barely acknowledged when I made honor roll. And now, Christmas was just one more reminder of where I stood. Or rather, where I didn't. I shut the album and exhaled shakily. I had spent years making excuses for them, telling myself it wasn't intentional, that maybe I was imagining it. But I wasn't imagining it, and I wasn't going to pretend anymore. The next morning, I sat Mia and Lucas down at the kitchen table. "Mommy, what's wrong?" Lucas asked, frowning. I took a deep breath. "I just wanted to talk to you both about something important, about family." Mia's eyes widened. "Are we in trouble?" I smiled softly. "No, sweetheart, but I want to talk about something I learned a little too late in life." They both sat up straighter, listening. Family isn't just about who you're related to. It's about the people who show up for you. The people who make you feel loved, not just when it's convenient for them, but always. Lucas tilted his head. "Like you and Daddy." "Exactly," I said, reaching across the table to squeeze his little hand. Mia bit her lip. "Is this about Grandma and Grandpa?" I hesitated, but then I nodded. "Yes, it is." They exchanged a glance. They were young, but not oblivious. They had noticed things, even if they hadn't fully understood them. Lucas poked at his cereal. "They didn't come for Christmas." Mia frowned. "And they didn't get us anything." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "They love you," I said carefully, because I would never tell my kids otherwise. But sometimes people don't know how to show love the right way. And when people keep hurting you, on purpose, you have to decide if you still want them in your life. Lucas frowned. "Like when someone is mean at school and doesn't stop." "Yes," I said, my heart aching. Just like that. Mia was quiet for a long moment. Then finally she asked, "So, are we still seeing them?" I looked between my children, feeling the full weight of my decision. "No, sweetheart, we're not." Mia's eyes filled with tears, not because she missed them, but because she understood. And then, to my surprise, she nodded. "Okay, Lucas looked relieved. Can we make pancakes now? I let out a watery laugh. Yes, baby, we can make pancakes. As they scrambled off their chairs, giggling about toppings, I felt something inside me shift. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to fix something that was never mine to fix. I wasn't chasing approval that was never meant for me. I was breaking the cycle. And that was the best Christmas gift I could have ever given my children. It had been 2 weeks since I blocked my parents. 2 weeks of silence. 2 weeks of peace. And then, the letters started coming. The first one arrived in an envelope with my mother's handwriting. My stomach twisted the moment I saw it. I should have thrown it away, but curiosity, or maybe old habits, made me open it. Daisy, sweetheart, it began. I stopped there, already feeling the anger rising in my chest. Sweetheart? That's how she started this? After what they had done? After choosing my sister over me? Over my kids? I forced myself to keep reading. I don't understand why you're doing this. We are family. Families have disagreements, but they always come back together. We never meant to hurt you. You're overreacting. Overreacting. That word again. I clenched my jaw and kept going. We thought you understood that things have been hard financially. We didn't have enough to do a big Christmas for everyone, so we did what we could. Your sister has been struggling too, you know. She needed our help. Why are you punishing us for that? I let out a short laugh. So that was their excuse? That they had to choose because they didn't have enough for everyone? They had money for a luxury Christmas for my nieces, but nothing for my kids? I had spent years giving them the benefit of the doubt. Not anymore. I folded the letter neatly and placed it in the trash. 3 days later, I got a text. This time, it was from my aunt, my mom's older sister. I hesitated before opening it. Hey, Daisy, I just had a long talk with your mom. She's really upset. She's been crying over this whole thing. She doesn't understand why you're being so harsh. You know how much she loves you, right? I rolled my eyes. There it was, the classic guilt trip. When they couldn't bully me into compliance, they tried shaming me into forgiveness. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I stared at the message, letting the weight of it sink in. My mom had been crying? Where were those tears when my kids sat by a small tree, unwrapping cheap gifts, believing their grandparents couldn't afford more? Where was that heartbreak when my sister's kids were showing off their designer sneakers and brand new electronics? Where was her sadness when I found out, through a social media post, that my own parents had celebrated Christmas without us? They weren't crying for me. They were crying because they had lost control of me. Because for the first time in my life, I was refusing to be the daughter who swallowed her feelings just to keep the peace. I took a deep breath and finally typed my response. She's not upset because she hurt me. She's upset because I finally stood up for myself. And if you can't understand that, then maybe you should stop being her messenger. I hit send. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The final attempt came through an old friend of my mother's, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. A Facebook message. Daisy, I just wanted to reach out. Your mom is devastated. She doesn't know how things got so bad between you. She asked me to tell you she loves you. She's heartbroken over what's happened. I know you're upset, but can't you just talk to her? Life is too short for this kind of grudge. I stared at the message, fingers hovering over the keyboard. They still didn't get it. This wasn't a grudge. This was a boundary. A decision to stop chasing people who made it clear I wasn't a priority. And yet they refused to acknowledge what they had done. There was no apology, no taking responsibility, just more manipulation. This time, I responded with only one sentence. If she's heartbroken, it's only because she finally got treated the way she treated me. That night, David found me sitting on the couch, my phone face down beside me. More messages? He guessed. I nodded. More guilt trips? Yep. He sat down beside me, watching me closely. You okay? I thought about it for a moment. And then, to my surprise, I realized I was. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for my parents to care. I wasn't desperate for their approval. I wasn't grasping at the hope that one day they'd treat me the way I had always treated them. I was done. And that felt like freedom. David took my hand, giving it a squeeze. Good. And just like that, I knew. This was what real love felt like. 2 months passed. 2 months without a word from my parents, my sister, or anyone else carrying their guilt-laced messages. 2 months of peace, of dinners with my husband and kids, of laughter around the table, of weekends spent making memories without the shadow of family obligation hanging over me. At first, it felt strange, like something was missing. But then I realized what I was feeling wasn't loss. It was relief. But just when I thought I had fully stepped away from the family that had chosen to discard me, something happened that forced me to redefine what family really meant. It was late February when my phone buzzed with a message from my Aunt Linda, my dad's younger sister. I hesitated before opening it. Linda had always been different from the rest of the family. She wasn't part of the drama, wasn't tangled up in my parents' games. She had always been kind, but we had never been close. Her message was simple. Hey, Daisy. I know things have been rough with your parents. I just wanted you to know that I see you. And if you and the kids ever want to come over for dinner, my door is always open. I stared at the screen, my heart tightening. There was no guilt trip, no attempt to manipulate me into going back. Just an offer. An invitation, not an expectation. I thought about it for a long time before replying. That would be really nice. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something unexpected. Hope. The following weekend, David and I packed the kids into the car and drove to Linda's house. It wasn't a mansion like my parents' home, but it was warm, filled with the smell of home-cooked food and the sound of laughter. Linda greeted us at the door, her face lighting up. You made it. She bent down, smiling at Mia and Lucas. You two must be freezing. Come inside, I made hot chocolate. The kids instantly adored her. As they settled in with their drinks, Linda led me into the kitchen. I know you don't want to talk about it, she said gently, but I just want you to know I don't agree with what they did to you. Tears pricked my eyes. They don't even think they did anything wrong. Linda sighed. Of course they don't. That's how they are. They expect everyone to cater to them, to forgive them without accountability. I nodded, swallowing hard. They didn't just do it to me. They did it to my kids. Her eyes softened. And that's why you're doing the right thing. Protecting your kids from people who only love conditionally? That's the best decision you could ever make. I took a shaky breath. Then why does it still hurt? Because you're a good person, Daisy. And good people always hope for better. But sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is accept that they won't change. And stop waiting for them to. I looked around at her cozy kitchen, at the way she had welcomed my family with open arms. And I realized maybe I hadn't lost family. Maybe I had just found the ones who actually deserved to be called that. The evening was everything I had once hoped to have with my own parents. Linda's husband played board games with Mia and Lucas, laughing as they made up their own rules. Dinner was filled with conversation that felt easy, not forced. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to prove my worth. Linda didn't see me as the backup daughter, the one who had to accept whatever scraps of attention were left over. She saw me as family, and treated me like it. As we drove home that night, I glanced in the rearview mirror at my kids, fast asleep in the back seat. David reached over and squeezed my hand. You okay? I smiled softly. Yeah, I think I am. Because maybe family wasn't about blood. Maybe it was about who showed up, who loved you without conditions, who made space for you without making you beg for it. Spring came quickly, washing away the cold remnants of winter. With it came something else. Clarity. I no longer woke up expecting a call from my parents. I no longer hesitated before checking my messages. bracing for another attempt at guilt or manipulation. I no longer cared if they would ever understand why I walked away. Because I finally understood it myself. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for closure. I had already given it to myself. It had been 4 months since Christmas when my mother finally found a way to contact me again. A letter. Another one. David was the one who picked it up from the mailbox, holding it up between 2 fingers like it might bite. "Do you want to read it?" I took a deep breath, staring at my mother's handwriting on the envelope. Then, without hesitation, I dropped it in the trash. David raised an eyebrow. "That easy?" I smiled and meant it. "Yeah, it is." For years, I told myself that family was forever. That no matter how many times my parents chose my sister over me, no matter how many times I was treated like an afterthought, I had to hold on. Because that's just how family is. But I had finally learned the truth. Family isn't about DNA. It's about the people who make you feel loved, safe, and seen. And my parents? They had spent a lifetime proving that they weren't those people. Easter weekend rolled around, and for the first time, I felt no obligation to reach out to my parents. Instead, we spent the day at Aunt Linda's house. The kids ran around the backyard searching for Easter eggs while Linda and I sat on the porch, drinking coffee and watching them play. "This is nice," Linda said, "having family around." I smiled. "Yeah, it is." She hesitated for a moment before adding, "I know it's not the same, Daisy. I know you probably still miss them in some ways." I thought about that. Did I miss them? Or did I miss the idea of them? The parents I had wanted them to be, rather than the ones they actually were? I took a deep breath, letting the warm breeze carry away the weight that had once sat so heavy on my chest. "No," I said honestly, "I don't." And for the first time, I knew it was true. That night, I did something I hadn't done since Christmas. I scrolled through old photos of my parents, my sister, the life I had once tried so hard to hold on to. And then, one by one, I deleted them. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but because I didn't need them anymore. I was done looking back. I was done wondering if I had made the right decision. I was done giving love to people who refused to return it. I put my phone down, exhaled deeply, and closed my eyes. I had let go. The next morning, as I was packing the kids' lunches, Mia suddenly asked, "Mommy, will we ever see Grandma and Grandpa again?" I paused, looking down at her little face, so full of innocence, so unaware of the weight behind that question. "I don't know, baby," I said honestly. Lucas tilted his head. "Do you miss them?" I thought about that. Did I? "No," I said softly. "I miss what I thought we had, but I love what we have now even more." Mia nodded, as if she understood in the simple, wise way that children often do. And just like that, it was enough. Months turned into a year. And in that time, I built something better than the family I had lost. I built a life filled with love, honesty, and respect. I built new traditions with the people who showed up for me. And most importantly, I stopped waiting for love from people who had already shown me they weren't willing to give it. Because the best revenge wasn't anger or bitterness, it was happiness. And I had finally found it.